Want to avoid personal liability if your business fails, right? Can you imagine losing your family home and being made bankrupt after your business goes under? Listen, that is really scary stuff, and it does happen to UK directors. Now, it doesn't have to happen to you. My name's Chris Worden, I'm from Director First, and in today's video, I'm going to reveal the exact steps that every single director in the UK needs to take to mitigate the damage and the potential of personal liability if the business fails. So in the next 10 to 15 minutes, you're going to learn to navigate insolvency like an absolute pro. Grab a coffee, turn your phone off, relax, watch the video to the end. Trust me, this is not a video you can afford to miss. Now, if you're a director out there who owes debts in your business, and it could be HMRC, bounce back loans, C-bills or suppliers, you're probably searching for answers. It's probably how you found me on YouTube today. Now, you might be coming across firms that say you can liquidate for £3,000 or your problems go away. You might be coming across firms that are saying, listen, pay us £5,000 and we'll take on your debt-ridden company, you can sail off into the sunset. I'm going to take all your worry away. Now, is it really that simple? For many, it's not. So listen, stay tuned. I'm going to break down the steps that you must take to mitigate any chance of personal liability and ensure that you're not caught off guard. I'm going to cover absolutely everything from seeding tracing immediately to seeking professional advice, everything in between. So let's get started, okay? Right, first thing, let's have a look at insolvency. What does it actually mean? Now, insolvency is a technical term, and we have something called the corporate insolvency test. There are 3 questions that you've got to answer as a business. The first one is, can I pay my debts when they fall due? If you can't, you're insolvent. Okay? If you're on a time to pay with an HMRC, you've got some time to pay with suppliers, it's a sign the business is insolvent. Question 2 is the balance sheet. Are my liabilities more than my assets? If your liabilities are more than your assets, you're insolvent. Question 3, is the legal action test. Has somebody got a CCJ against your company? If they have, your company's insolvent. So, if you're insolvent, these are the things that you've got to look out for and the things you need to do to limit the chance of personal liability. One of the things you could do is cease trading immediately, okay? As soon as a company is deemed insolvent, directors in many cases will actually cease trading immediately to prevent further financial deterioration, to prevent further losses to creditors. I'm not saying that's suitable for your business, right? Point 2 is going to help me understand whether point 1 is suitable for you, because point 2 is you seek professional advice immediately. When you get behind on debts, you've got to engage with somebody in the insolvency profession, right? You want to find out somebody out there who people trust, check the reviews out, and understand the options for your business. Everything's a little bit different, okay? But the advice should be there to help you understand where you're at and what your options are. Now, I probably get 300 inquiries a month. Okay, we do not put 300 businesses into liquidation every month, okay? Most of our calls are just giving people some solid advice on what to do next and how to sort of understand how the next few months might roll out, okay? So just by picking a phone up to somebody like me does not necessarily mean that you're going to need to go into liquidation, okay? Another way of sort of limiting personal liability is actually to conduct a valuation of the assets in your business. Because if you become insolvent, you might want to sell the assets to try and bring some money into the business, or you might decide to buy the assets from the insolvent company and start again. But what you've got to do, you've got to make sure that all the assets are properly valued by somebody who's qualified to do that. Because if you sell assets at an undervalue, this will be challenged by a liquidator and can result in personal liability. So the example I like to give, lots of people will have vehicles in the business. And let's say on We Buy Any Van, your vehicle is worth 15 grand, okay? But you decide to sell it to someone you know, or another company you're connected with for 3 grand. Well, you go into liquidation, the insolvency practitioner is going to look at that and go, you've sold it too cheap, we're going to come to you for the difference, okay? So you can sell assets. You can sell assets to raise money, you can sell assets to a connected company, but you've got to make sure that you're selling them for market value, and the person who deem market value is an agent, okay? If you want an introduction, get in touch with us. We'll put you in touch with a panel that we work with, right? Now, another thing you've got to be really careful of is avoiding making something called preference payments. So when a business becomes insolvent, a director should not show favoritism to any particular creditor, right? And if you do, that is called a preference payment. So you're not meant to pay off certain creditors ahead of others, right? If you do that, the action can be reversed by a liquidator and can mean personal liability. I'll give you some good examples. Let me have a slip of my coffee. 1 second. So, you've got arrears to HMRC, you've got arrears to your rent, you've got arrears to the bank, you've got arrears to suppliers, but you've taken out a loan that you've personally guaranteed. And towards the end of your business life, you pay off your personal guaranteed loan and then go into liquidation. An insolvency practitioner will look at that and they'll understand exactly why you've done that. You've paid that off in preference to everybody else to cover your own arse. They will look at that as a preference payment, they'll set it aside and they'll make you personally liable. I've seen it lots and lots of times. Another example of a preference payment is a business is insolvent, it's hurtling into liquidation, and they empty the money in the bank account by paying back their Auntie Mildred or paying back one supplier and screwing the rest. That's a clear preference payment. An insolvency practitioner can set that aside and come after the director. Okay, preference payments can and will make you personal liable. Another tip to avoid personal liability is to document all transactions, right? Maintain accurate and thorough records of all transactions that you're making as a business. And this includes documenting the rationale behind selling any assets, because it might be you're selling assets to continue to trade, okay? Make sure all dealings are transparent. Proper documentation can protect you from any accusations of wrongdoing down the line. Another thing to try and avoid personal liability, maybe closing the company is not the right idea. Maybe you consider something called a company voluntary arrangement. And a CVA, it allows a company to reach an agreement with its creditors to pay off all unsecured debts over a period of time while continuing to trade. It's like a rescue option, okay? It's not viable for everybody, this, by the way. Okay, but it allows you to avoid liquidation, and if you avoid liquidation, there's more chance that you'll avoid personal liability. A CVA is not for everybody. You need to get independent professional advice for this. We can have a chat with you about your situation. Another thing to avoid personal liability is you enter liquidation. You know, if rescue options aren't viable, you might need to opt for a liquidation. And this involves an orderly wind-up of the company, okay? If there's any assets, the liquidator will sell the assets to raise some money for creditors, and they'll distribute the money they get to creditors in order of the preference, okay? Now, going into liquidation is not without its dangers, okay? Because before you go into liquidation, you need to understand your personal position. Have you got an overdrawn loan account? If you've got an overdrawn loan account, a liquidator is going to ask you to pay it back on liquidation. Most directors don't have the money to pay it back, but it can cause some serious issues, especially if you've got like a house with a lot of equity in, or you've got a lot of personal wealth, because the more money you've got, sadly, the harder a director's loan account is to settle. But you can get a deal done with most liquidators where they'll reduce the amount that you pay back and you'll pay it back over a period of time. But please, 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 you do not enter into liquidation until you've understood your director's loan position in full and how you're going to deal with it. Dear God, please do not listen to somebody who says, don't worry about this, we'll deal with it down the line. That is a sure sign that they're going to take your eyeballs and come back for the sockets. Now, Another thing, touching on a point before, avoid transactions under values, right? Directors should not sell company assets for less than the market value unless there is a compelling business reason to do so. So a transaction at undervalue will be challenged and set aside by a liquidator. It's basically selling stuff for cheap out the back door. Don't do it, get an agent to value it. Another thing, you've got to do this, dead important, avoid fraudulent trading. Directors must not engage in fraudulent trading, and all this involves is basically continuing to trade with the intent to defraud creditors. Fraudulent trading can actually become a criminal offence, right? And can result in severe penalties like personal liability and even imprisonment. An example of fraudulent trading is taking loads of customer deposits without the intention of doing the job, or racking up huge HMRC arrears with no intention to pay them. Okay. Another thing you can do to limit the damage personally is regularly assess solvency. You know, where is your business? You must continually monitor the company's financial positions, and you need to use your cash flow, right? Cash flow is one way of doing it, and balance sheet. Can you pay your debts on time? Are your liabilities more than your assets? If it's insolvent, you've got to prioritise the interest of creditors. Now, the key to this is having accurate financial information, okay? So you want to use something like Xero, QuickBooks, Sage is a bit hard, I think. Xero, QuickBooks, Free Agent. And as long as you're updating this stuff, at the click of the button, it'll tell you where your business is, okay? If you understand where your business is, you can make better decisions. Another thing to avoid personal liability is signing personal guarantees. Honest to God, you've got to be super cautious about providing a personal guarantee, because if a company becomes insolvent, the creditors are going to come to you for the guarantee. I see it all the time. I don't believe anybody signs a personal guarantee thinking the business is going to end up in liquidation. You'll sign a personal guarantee when things are going good, but when the tide changes, then personal guarantees, bear with me, then personal guarantees generally come with high interest rates. So you've got to be super careful before you sign them. Have a look at your projections, and it sort of feeds into my last point about financial management. You know, have a look at your projections. Can you afford that personally guaranteed loan if your sales drop 10%? Can you afford the personally guaranteed loan if they drop 20%? What if they drop 30%? What if they drop 30% and your costs go up 20%? You've got to be making informed decisions. Don't be signing personally guaranteed loans to just survive, because I see it so many times where a director signs a personal guarantee because they think they're going to get through it. They end up in liquidation. The personal guarantee starts to get called upon, and it puts immense stress. This is where you can, in some stages, lose your house and get made bankrupt. Be super, 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 super careful. Listen, if you follow these steps, you can mitigate the risks associated with personal liability and insolvency. But the key thing is you've got to act responsibly. You've got to seek advice early. If you want some advice, my name's Chris Word and I'm from Director First. God bless.